Morbid Facts, Part 39. A 19-year-old girl named Olga was camping with her stepfather in Russia when a mother brown bear attacked them. After the bear broke her stepfather's neck and smashed his skull, Olga attempted to flee. But the bear chased her down and soon grabbed her by the legs and started mauling her. Olga then managed to make 3 phone calls to her mother while being eaten alive by the bear and her 3 cubs. In the first phone call, she screamed, "Mom, the bear is eating me. Mom, it's such agony. Mom, help." At first, her mother thought it was a joke, but soon heard the true horror in her daughter's voice and the sound of bears growling and chewing. But she could only helplessly listen in horror to her daughter's screams for mercy. Nearly an hour later, the bears had left her, but Olga knew she was gonna die. She said, "Mom, I don't feel the pain anymore. Forgive me for everything. I love you so much." Morbid Facts, Part 41. After her daughter died of yellow fever in 1872, a heartbroken mother wanted to make sure that her daughter was never alone in times of need. Since the daughter was terrified of storms, the grave was constructed with an entrance leading to a staircase that descends to her coffin. During thunderstorms, the mother would go to the graveyard and enter the tomb to comfort her child. Convicted rapists in Saudi Arabia are often executed by public beheadings. Disney's first water park, called River Country, closed in 2001 after an 11-year-old boy died from a brain-eating parasite he got in the lake. The park still lies completely abandoned to this day. Morbid Facts, Part 42. When 13-year-old Ryan White got AIDS from a blood donor in 1984, he was only given 6 months to live. Even though doctors said he posed no risk to other students, he was banned from returning to school by a petition signed by 117 parents. An auction was even held to raise funds to keep him out, and a local newspaper that supported him received death threats. The family was forced to leave town when a bullet was shot through the window of their home. Ryan outlived the doctor's diagnosis by 5 years, dying at the age of 19. Frank Goldsmith was a Titanic survivor who later lived near Tiger Stadium in Detroit. But he said he never took his children to a ball game because the roar of the crowd reminded him of the screams of people dying in the freezing waters. Morbid Facts, Part 43. Seth MacFarlane and Mark Wahlberg were both booked to fly on American Airlines Flight 11, the first plane that crashed into the World Trade Center on 9/11. Wahlberg decided last minute to fly to Toronto instead, while MacFarlane missed the flight by 10 minutes due to a hangover. Both have said they've had countless dreams of the scenario in which they got on that plane. During the Holocaust, famous Jewish boxer Shlomo Aruch was forced to fight fellow prisoners at Auschwitz. It was merely for the entertainment of Nazi officers, and the losers would be sent to the gas chambers. Aruch survived over 200 fights over a 2-year span and was freed when the camp was liberated. Morbid Facts, Part 44. In 1860, a 20-year-old woman named Rhoda Derry was sent to a mental hospital after growing up with no signs of mental health problems. But she had been acting strange lately and was believed to have been possessed by a demon. For the next few decades, she literally lived in a small basket, and her muscles became so weak that it became impossible for her to move her legs or hips. She eventually scratched at her eyes until she went blind, beat her face until her front teeth were knocked out, and lost the ability to speak. In 1904, she was finally transferred to a different asylum where she would die 2 years later. Morbid Facts, Part 45. After 9/11, the rescue dogs searching in the rubble started to become depressed because they weren't finding any live bodies. Rescue workers started to bury themselves in the debris to trick the dogs into thinking they were saving people. It is estimated that just over 100 billion people have died on the planet to date. In 1971, high school student Juliana Kopka was sucked out of an airplane after it was struck by lightning. She fell nearly 10,000 feet still strapped to her chair and lived, only to endure an 11-day walk through the Amazon rainforest to the nearest civilization. She was eventually rescued by some local lumbermen and ended up being the sole survivor of the plane crash. Morbid Facts, Part 46. If you're a woman who is either very young, very old, rich, poor, stubborn, hangs out with other women, has ever been in an argument, has too many children, has a birthmark, or has had milk turn sour in your fridge, you would qualify as a witch in 1692 Salem and would promptly be executed. Some tumors can contain pockets of hair and teeth, and more rarely, some can even grow more complex organs like eyes, hands, and feet. Polish teenager Iga Jasica unexpectedly woke up in the middle of her brain surgery and calmly asked the doctor, "How's it going?" But she wasn't in any pain, so they talked about cats until the surgery was completed. Morbid Facts, Part 46. In 1994, Mauro Prosperi was competing in a 145-mile endurance event through the Sahara Desert. During the race, a sandstorm disoriented Prosperi, causing him to run nearly 200 miles in the wrong direction. He soon found himself completely stranded in the middle of the desert without any resources. After a few days of suffering, he decided to slit his own wrists, attempting to die a less painful death. But he was so dehydrated that his thick blood clotted up the wounds, and he woke up the next day. 9 days later, he was rescued in a completely different country after losing 40 pounds of body weight. He survived off of insects, cactuses, his own urine, bats, snakes, and wet wipes. Morbid Facts, Part 48. Tom and Eileen Longergan were a young couple from Louisiana on a vacation in the Coral Sea off the coast of Australia. They were scuba diving with a large group in the open ocean and were accidentally left behind. By the time someone realized they were missing, it was too late, and the couple was never found. This is a series of cat paintings by famous artist Louis Wayne from the early 1900s. They capture a slow descent into the varying levels of his schizophrenic episodes. After watching a documentary about women being tortured and killed in a basement, Katrina McGaw realized she was actually living in the same apartment. Morbid Facts, Part 53. Frankie Muniz has had 9 concussions throughout his life and now suffers from severe memory loss. His condition is so bad that he doesn't even remember being on the TV show Malcolm in the Middle. According to ancient beliefs, birthmarks show how you were killed in your past life. A man named Michael Paul was on his way home from church when he decided to casually crack his neck like any other time. But afterwards, he suddenly started sweating profusely and then went pale. By the time Paul could receive medical care, he had already slipped into a coma. Soon afterwards, Michael Paul had died from cracking his neck. Morbid Facts, Part 55. In 1998, 2-year-old Harrison Johnson was stung 432 times after disturbing a yellow jacket's nest in Tampa, Florida. Harrison's parents asked for neighborhood children and local church members to pray for him, but they didn't call for medical help until he stopped breathing more than 7 hours later. The parents belong to a religion that looks down on hospitals because they believe that doctors practice witchcraft. Doctors say the little boy could have been saved, but likely died an exquisitely painful death as a result of his parents' negligence. Morbid Facts, Part 56. Michael Jackson avoided tragedy on 9/11 thanks to his mother. He had a meeting at the top of one of the towers that morning, but missed his appointment because he overslept. The night before, he had been up late talking to his mom on the phone until 3 a.m. In France, you can legally marry a dead person as long as you can prove that they planned on marrying you before they died. On June 11, 2019, Illinois teenager Riley Horner was accidentally kicked in the head. As a result of the injury, her memory resets every 2 hours and she wakes up every day thinking it's June 11th. Morbid Facts, Part 57. There's a pair of conjoined twins whose brains are so intertwined that they share each other's senses. One can see what the other sees, taste what the other tastes, and feel what the other feels. If you hit someone with your car in China, you have to pay for their medical care. But killing someone with your car in China is just a one-time fine. For this reason, people have gone back to kill the person that they accidentally hit. The Roman Emperor Nero accidentally killed his pregnant wife by kicking her to death. He then found a young boy who looked exactly like her, castrated him, and married him. Morbid Facts, Part 58. Terry Kath, the original lead singer of the band Chicago, died after accidentally shooting himself in the head. He picked up a 9mm pistol and said, "Don't worry about it. Look, the clip's not even in it." He held the gun to his head, and before pulling the trigger, his final words were, "What do you think I'm gonna do, blow my brains out?" There was a bullet in the chamber, and he died instantly. When Pablo Escobar's daughter wanted a unicorn, he bought her a horse and stapled a cone to its head and wings to its back. The horse died a week later due to severe infections. In 1984, a woman started hearing a voice in her head. The voice told her she had a brain tumor, where the tumor was, and how to treat it. Despite no other symptoms, the doctors ordered tests and found the tumor right where the voice said it would be. Morbid Facts, Part 59. The suit worn by the Cowardly Lion in The Wizard of Oz was made out of real lion skin and fur. Several lions were killed in order to make the costume look as realistic as possible. In 2012, a woman from New York donated her kidney to save the life of her boss. The boss then fired her when she took too long to recover from the operation. A British Royal Marine had a leg tattoo of Liverpool's motto, "You'll never walk alone." But after a major injury in Afghanistan, his leg was amputated. The surgeon had to cut the tattoo so it now read, "You'll never walk." Morbid Facts, Part 60. A man was looking for his childhood home on Google Maps when he found both of his dead parents still sitting outside. As the Titanic sank, one female passenger chose to stay on board because she refused to leave her dog. She was found dead in the water, holding her dog in her arms. If sugar gliders are deprived of social interaction, they can become so sad that they can die from loneliness. In 2007, a man from Florida woke up in the middle of the night with a severe headache. When he drove to the hospital, they found a bullet in his head. It turned out that his wife had shot him in the head while he was sleeping. Morbid Facts, Part 61. JFK's little sister Rosemary was born mentally ill, and the Kennedy family didn't want to be embarrassed by her. So they paid a surgeon to perform a lobotomy on her when she turned 23. During a lobotomy, the surgeon would shove a metal rod into the skull through the eye socket and scramble the frontal lobe. Rosemary was awake the whole time, and doctors asked her questions while they were cutting away at her brain. When she suddenly stopped verbally responding, they ended the surgery. Following the operation, Rosemary Kennedy was never able to walk or talk again. She was institutionalized for the rest of her life until she died at the age of 86. Morbid Facts, Part 62. In 2008, a 23-year-old Vietnamese woman suffered from a mysterious food allergy that aged her about 50 years in just a few days. Recognize any of the objects in this photo? This picture is designed to give the viewer the simulated experience of having a stroke. Everything looks hauntingly familiar, but you can't quite fully recognize a single object. In 1939, 5-year-old Lena Medina became the youngest confirmed person to ever give birth. Her son was born by C-section and was raised as her brother. Medina is still alive today, but has never revealed the identity of the father nor the circumstances of her impregnation. Morbid Facts, Part 63. Russian scientist Vladimir Demikhov is widely considered to be a pioneer in the world of organ transplants. He is also more notoriously known for his attempts to create a two-headed dog during the Cold War era. He created about 20 of these dogs, which had the ability to move around, drink water, and even bark. Most died within days, but one specimen was able to live for more than a month. Experts have considered his work horrifying but incredible. These were the clothing and acts of Rome's most famous executioner, Mastro Tita. He carried out a total of 516 executions over a 68-year span. In 2015, 17-year-old Rebecca Townsend completed her bucket list right before she was hit by a car. Her final goal was to save a life. Before the car hit her, she pushed her friend out of the way and sacrificed herself. Morbid Facts, Part 65. This is why you should never put your feet on a car's dashboard. 22-year-old Grain Healy had her legs propped up when the airbag went off and forced both of her feet into her skull, breaking almost every bone in her face. As a result of her injuries, part of her skull was removed and she lived without a forehead for 2 years. Celestis Incorporated is a company that will send your cremated remains into space. For a price ranging from $1,000 to $15,000, you have the option of being launched into deep space, to the moon, or into Earth's orbit. In the 9th century, the corpse of a pope was put on trial and found guilty. His 7-month-old skeleton had 3 fingers removed and was thrown into a river with weights tied to it. Morbid Facts, Part 66. In 2008, Charles Peck was killed instantly in a commuter train crash in California. But somehow 35 phone calls were made to his friends and family from Charles's phone in the 12 hours before his body was recovered. When answered, all people could hear was static on the line. Everyone thought he was just lost in the wreckage until his mutilated body was found. In 1955, a pregnant woman was scheduled for a C-section in Morocco, but she fled the hospital after watching another woman die during the procedure. She was in pain for a few days afterwards, but when the pain suddenly disappeared, she simply went on with her life. 46 years later, she was diagnosed with a tumor. It turned out to be the calcified baby still inside of her. Morbid Facts, Part 67. In the year 1916, a town in Tennessee hanged an elephant. Mary the Asian elephant was once the star of the show at the Sparks world-famous circus. But one day, she was working with a trainer who was clearly not qualified for the job. During a parade, the man hit her with a spear and abused her excessively. In pain, she suddenly ran at him and stomped on his head, killing him instantly. Local residents began crying for blood, so the circus owner agreed to kill Mary in retribution. On the evening of September 12, 1916, murderous Mary was hanged from a crane in front of a crowd of cheering people. Morbid Facts, Part 70. In 1972, Neil Armstrong visited the town of Langholm, Scotland. When he got there, he was read a 400-year-old law declaring that any Armstrong found in the town should be hanged. This is a high-resolution image of stitches in the eye after a corneal transplant. Thanks to the National Association for the Preservation of Skin Art, you can leave your tattoos behind after you die. After the funeral home has removed your tattooed skin, the organization will preserve it in a frame and send it to your loved ones. This is a photo of Benjamin, the last known Tasmanian tiger, at the Hobart Zoo in 1936. The species officially went extinct when Benjamin was locked outside of his sleeping quarters on a cold Tasmanian night and froze to death. Morbid Facts, Part 71. This is a photo of 2 4-year-old boys playing in a sandbox full of asbestos in the town of Wittenoom, Australia in 1954. This was during a time when very little was known about the devastating effects of asbestos on humans. Both boys eventually died from mesothelioma before the age of 40. This is how the population of American buffalo dropped from 30 million to 300 in just 50 years. Those are all buffalo skulls. During the French Revolution, people on death row often fought to be the first one executed by the guillotine. This was because the blade would dull after multiple uses and eventually wouldn't cut the head clean off on the first attempt. Morbid Facts, Part 72. Dr. Seuss cheated on his wife while she had cancer. After finding out about the affair, she killed herself and Dr. Seuss married his mistress. This former jailer from Georgia was arrested on rape charges. Police say the scratch marks in his mugshot are from the victim fighting back. This is a photo of a 9-year-old boy from Amsterdam during the winter hunger Dutch famine that ended in 1945. Many children carried spoons with them wherever they went just in case they'd be offered a meal. This is a medical journal showing the before and after of a mental patient who received a lobotomy. The caption reads, "Simple schizophrenia patients make nice household pets after operation." Morbid Facts, Part 73. In 1980, when a group of loggers were cutting off the top of a chestnut oak tree, they noticed the mummified remains of a hunting dog. Experts believe that it chased its prey up the tree in the 1960s, only to get stuck and eventually die. He was posthumously named Stucky after Wildlife Wonderland in Melbourne, Australia, when abandoned in 2012. A dead great white shark was left to decompose in a tank for more than 5 years. This is a leaked screenshot from CNN's supposed doomsday tape. The footage is meant to be broadcasted by the last surviving employee in case all of humanity is about to die. It features a marching band playing the song "Nearer My God to Thee," the same song that onboard musicians played as the Titanic sank. Morbid Facts, Part 74. Paul Carrison's entire skin gradually turned blue after he attempted to use silver as a home remedy. He was trying to treat his dermatitis, a skin condition. It is rather common to break someone's ribs while performing CPR on them. A lot of people say it sounds and feels just like bubble wrap. In 1973, a man purchased an old hearse and told all his friends that he needed it to bring all the people he killed to his private cemetery. While all of his friends thought he was kidding, it was serial killer Donald Gaskins telling the truth. Morbid Facts, Part 76. In 1976, 7 armed men broke into Bob Marley's home and attempted to assassinate him. Bob was shot in the chest and the arm but survived. His wife Rita was shot in the head but also survived thanks to her thick dreadlocks slowing down the bullet. Marley's manager claimed that the CIA was behind the assassination attempt. In 1894, a priest in Germany saved a little boy from drowning. That little boy was Adolf Hitler. In many of his later portraits, Napoleon Bonaparte can be seen with his hand over his stomach. This is because he suffered from severe abdominal pain due to what we can identify today as stomach cancer. It is believed that he died from the cancer at the age of 51. Morbid Facts, Part 78. Dennis Vashurin looks like a young teenage boy, but he's actually 32 years old. Due to a genetic malfunction, Dennis stopped aging sometime in his teens, but otherwise he's healthy. In ancient Rome, men found guilty of rape sometimes had their testicles crushed between 2 stones. In Devon, England, there's a shadow of a sign that closely resembles a person being hanged. Coincidentally, it can be seen near a spot called Dead Man's Cross, where criminals were hanged from a gallows in the 13th century. Richard Klinkhammer's wife mysteriously disappeared in 1991. The next year, he wrote a book on 7 ways to kill your spouse. A few years later, the new owners of his former home found his wife's skeletal remains. He was sentenced to 7 years in prison but was released 5 years early for good behavior. Morbid Facts, Part 79. In 2009, spelunker John Jones was caving with some friends and family in the Nutty Putty Cave in Utah. About an hour into the expedition, John decided to find the route known as the Birth Canal, a narrow passage that spelunkers must crawl through carefully if they dare. After finding what he thought was the birth canal, he crawled in head first and started inching his way forward. But John would soon realize that this wasn't the birth canal, since it was way tighter than anything safe to crawl through. By this point, John didn't even have enough room to wiggle out the way he came, so his only option was to push forward. Over the next 27 hours, hundreds of rescuers failed to pull John out of the crevice. At some point, John died from cardiac arrest and his body was never retrieved. The Nutty Putty Cave has since been sealed off. Morbid Facts, Part 80. Don Rickles passed away before he was able to record any lines for Toy Story 4. But instead of replacing him, Disney reviewed 25 years of material from the first 3 films, video games, and other media. They were able to assemble enough dialogue to cover the entire film. This seal pup was abandoned by her colony because she's ginger. In 1945, a U.S. Air Force bomber accidentally crashed into the Empire State Building due to heavy fog. The accident caused the deaths of 14 people and more than $1 million in damages. Plane parts also severed the cables of an elevator and the woman inside fell for 70 stories. She miraculously lived and still holds the world record for the longest survived elevator fall. Morbid Facts, Part 81. Lil Wayne accidentally shot himself in the chest when he was 12 years old. A policeman by the name of Uncle Bob came to his rescue after multiple officers stepped over him. Until as recently as 1985, doctors believed that babies couldn't feel pain and performed surgeries on them without anesthesia. Due to their unique spinal structure, elephants are not meant to carry heavy loads on their backs. They often suffer severe spinal injuries as a result of carrying tourists around for several hours each day. Morbid Facts, Part 82. Author Lewis Carroll wanted to marry an 11-year-old girl named Alice when he was 31. It is widely accepted that Alice in Wonderland was inspired by his obsession for little Alice Liddell. This is what the skull of a bone cancer patient looks like. Maggie the Wonder Dog was found pregnant and blinded with 17 gunshot wounds on the streets of Lebanon. Now she's a certified therapy dog and has a large following on Instagram. An Italian company has designed organic burial pods that are completely biodegradable. It will convert the dead into nutrients for trees to grow on. So instead of a graveyard, this will create a sacred forest of new life. Morbid Facts, Part 84. This is a photo of a Chicago mother hiding her face in shame after putting her children up for sale in 1948. The two that are circled were sold to an abusive family for $2 apiece so that their mother could afford to pay rent. Their new father would often chain them up in a barn and force them to work long hours on his farm. He even frequently called them slaves even though they didn't know what it meant at the time. In 1867, Carolyn Walter died from tuberculosis when she was just 17 years old. So her devastated sister Selma paid a sculptor to carve a beautiful headstone to remember her by. And every morning after Carolyn's funeral, a fresh flower was found tucked under the arm of her statue. This tradition still continues today, more than 150 years after her death, and no one knows who leaves them. Morbid Facts, Part 85. Denver Airport's Blue Mustang sculpture is nicknamed Blucifer because of its glowing red eyes. Just before it was unveiled in 2006, Blue Mustang's artist died after a 9,000-pound piece of the sculpture fell on him, adding credence to the theories that Blucifer is haunted or cursed. In 1963, two criminals in Mexico convinced local villagers that they were prophets and demanded worship and tribute. Prostitute Magdalena Solis was paid to imitate an Incan goddess as part of the scam. Suffering from religious delusion, she started to genuinely believe that she was a goddess. She soon took over the cult and started sacrificing her followers and drinking their blood.